Nobody bats 300 anymore because the value of hitting a fly ball, which could eventually become a home run, is so much more valuable. It's when the shift in the NBA went from 2-pointers to 3-pointers. Well, if I can make 40% of my threes, I'm just going to jack threes all over the place. There's more value in that. Well, there's more value in just like ripping driver most of the time.
The Smiley Show, only on SportsGrid.
You've got an 18-1-6 hockey team. You've got a 10-2 football team. So the best record in hockey, the best record in football, and top 5 in the NBA with Jokic and the gang, and the Nuggets at 14-6. And I'm saying to myself, what other town comes close to that?
The Craig Carton Show, only on SportsGrid.
You're legendary. I'm legendary. And both of these guys love each other. Right? Cam Ward, they do. They work out. They work out. Legendary.
Go ahead.
Cam Ward.
Yep.
Shador Sanders.
Yep.
250 plus and 2 tutties each.
Amazing. That's nuts.
What? Why is it nuts?
Come on, that's crazy.
Why, though?
Pro Football Today, only on SportsGrid.
I think this is a very tough one. I haven't bet this because I still think it's that close. I would lean towards the sentiment of the voter body instead of the anointing of the new star. But at a certain point, the next 2 weeks, Drake May could be undeniable. It's really interesting market right for those two. And remember when Matthew Stafford wasn't going to play all year? Remember in August where he wasn't practicing? And now he is number 2 for MVP. So go figure.
Fantasy Sports Today, only on SportsGrid.
The Dodgers keep getting better, plus the Big 12 shades Notre Dame. FOS Today starts now. Hi, everyone, and welcome to Front Office Sports Today. Your look inside the stories shaping the business and culture of sports. I'm Baker Machado here at FOS Studios in New York City, and this podcast is brought to you by Invesco QQQ. Changing the game has always been our game. You can access NASDAQ 100 companies in just one ETF, Invesco Distributors, Inc. Now, coming up on today's show, Notre Dame goes after the ACC, and the Colts sign a grandpa to play quarterback. Well, let's start with the latest from baseball's winter meetings in today's main event. Well, the back-to-back world champion LA Dodgers got even better this week, signing the best closer on the free agent market, that being Edwin Diaz, to a reported 3-year, $69 million deal. This according to ESPN's Jeff Passan. This would set an average annual value record for a relief pitcher. And according to reports, the Dodgers could make even more moves to bolster their squad. So to chat this and everything else happening over at the winter meetings, let's bring in our friend of the show, Paul Hembekides, producer for ESPN's Get Up. He's also a contributor to the Baseball Tonight podcast as well. So how did the Dodgers sign Edwin Diaz?
Somewhat surprisingly. Now, none of us are surprised that the Dodgers go to the very top of the market to fill the one and only hole or need that they have on their roster, considering they just went back-to-back, are going to have a meaningful chance to three-peat, as you well know. But I do think a lot of people across the industry, at least those with whom I've spoken, are somewhat surprised that the Mets weren't able to get this across the finish line themselves. I mean, Devin Williams not only is a favorite of the fans there, but he's a favorite of the owner. And when those trumpets blare in Queens, it's the kind of thing that really rallies the troops, for lack of a better term. And those are the kinds of things qualitatively that do matter to Steve Cohen and do matter to the fans out there. And so the fact that it was not so different than the Devin Williams contract that they had given out just a week or so before was somewhat surprising. Perhaps his relationship with the organization wasn't as strong as we may have thought. Perhaps getting rid of pitching coach Jeremy Hefner was not a move that he liked. And we know that his brother Alexis pitched with the Dodgers for a short time and spoke glowingly about his time with the organization. So ultimately, they got the very best guy in the market, and there's a meaningful chance that Edwin Diaz is going to throw the very last pitch of the 2026 season.
I mean, yeah, that's so crazy to even say that. And so how is he even going to fit in this bullpen, given the fact that the Dodgers seem like they were pretty invested in Roki Sasaki, who had a really good rookie campaign for the Dodgers? Who's going to close for this team? Is it going to be Diaz?
It's going to be Diaz, but it is the right question to ask considering how dominant Sasaki just was in the postseason. Look, Roki Sasaki came over with the promise of being a starter. Him becoming a dominant back-end piece like he was last year didn't exactly happen by accident, but it certainly wasn't their first choice. Now, keep in mind that Tanner Scott signed a 4-year, $72 million contract. He's a lefty, of course, in that rotation, and he's awfully good himself. And so he had a very ordinary year one of 4 that they signed him to, But they're going to go Scott and Diaz at the back end of that bullpen, and I think be even more dominant than they were a year ago. Keep in mind, this is a club that has at least floated. We've at least heard rumors that Tyler Glasnow might be someone they might consider trading. So I could see them rearranging the deck chairs, for lack of a better term. But what is clear is that they have the 8th and 9th innings figured out to a much larger degree than they had last season. And this is a Dodgers team that 2 years ago won the championship with having almost no representation from a starting standpoint. And last year did so without much of a bullpen. So we actually might be heading in a year in which the Dodgers are a more complete team, a roster with fewer holes than they were in either of the last 2 years in which they took home the trophy both times.
Which is crazy to think about. And it also even crazy, the Dodgers might not even be done. There's reports that the Dodgers are interested in Kyle Tucker, who's the #1 free agent right now. Obviously, they're one of the teams always mentioned with Tariq Skubal if he gets traded from the Tigers. I mean, do you think the Dodgers add two of the biggest pieces here, or at least one of these two names?
So the Dodgers are going to be in the conversation for both players. If Kyle Tucker's market comes to them, which is to say, if Kyle Tucker's market rhymes with what Freddie Freeman's did once upon a time when he in Atlanta couldn't reach the finish line, the Dodgers are more than happy to swoop in and sign, in his case, a first ballot Hall of Famer to a 6-year, $162 million contract, and that has obviously more than paid for itself. Now, from the perspective of Kyle Tucker's sweepstakes, it seems to me that everyone views this as a Blue Jays or the field. But it's not obvious to me that there's a big field. Kyle Tucker is not someone that the Yankees seem to be that hot on, or the Red Sox, or even going back to the Cubs, or the Padres, obviously, who are shedding, or the Phillies, now that they've brought Schwarber back. So a lot of the obvious Kyle Tucker teams, well, you know as well as I do, don't seem so obvious anymore. And so if the Toronto Blue Jays decide to pivot and pay Bo Bichette to come back, Kyle Tucker might be sort of up a creek without a paddle, at which point the Dodgers come in riding their white horse and offer him a 2 or 3 year contract that enables him to blow the AAV record out of the water and hit free agency once the new CBA kicks in, which candidly might be advantageous for most players at the top of the market. So I think you might see these kind of 1+1 deals or 2 or 3 year deals that include opt-outs so that players and their agents have optionality once we have a lot more CBA clarity.
All right, let's talk about the CBA here for a moment because, I mean, we've talked about how during the World Series, all baseball owners allegedly were saying they wanted the Dodgers to win because it would just prove this point about how mighty that they are and that there needs to be a salary cap instituted in Major League Baseball, which interestingly, Dodgers manager Dave Roberts has now come out saying he's actually in favor for. With the signing of Diaz, and let's just say the Dodgers do get one of these two big guys in Skubal or Tucker, do you feel like that it's only going to make this conversation about the CBA and potential labor stoppage here and the Dodgers only going to get louder because of this?
Yes, you're 100% right. We have no choice but to live through this conversation for the next year. Look, if all they do is sign Edwin Diaz, it would be bad enough for the average fan of the Reds or the Pirates or the Twins. But if they do wind up netting Kyle Tucker or trading, God forbid, for Tariq Skubal, it will have felt like the Dodgers are cheating. Of course, and you and I both know that they have a very sound infrastructure. They develop players as well as anybody, and they invest their money very shrewdly. And they also most definitely take advantage of that CBA loophole, which enables them to defer all sorts of money. All this to say, I don't think by any stretch of the imagination the Dodgers are ruining baseball or any such nonsense. But there is going to be a preponderance of fans around Major League Baseball that are going to cry every single time that team wins, and they're going to go into next season as a major favorite to win the championship.
Let's switch gears and let's talk about the Phillies. Big news for them, keeping manager Rob Thompson, but also keeping Kyle Schwarber on a 5-year, $150 million deal. Was there any chance that Schwarber left the Phillies? Was there anybody even interested in him?
No to your first question, yes to your second question. There was plenty of credible reporting that say that the Baltimore Orioles, of all teams, matched that 5-year, $150 million offer. We had also heard that the Pittsburgh Pirates, the Cincinnati Reds, and any number of other teams downstream not only were interested, but made very credible 9-figure offers to Kyle Schwarber, which from the perspective of a 33-year-old designated hitter is super rare. But I think it's a commentary on two different things. The first of which is the bat is so potent. And even though he's a designated hitter, teams recognize that right now in this run-scoring environment, having that kind of thump, the top or the middle of your order, is almost invaluable. And the second of which is Kyle Schwarber is as good, as revered, as collected as any clubhouse guy in the entire sport. Kyle Schwarber is a guy, one of the few guys in baseball that you're actually paying more than 100 cents on the dollar because of the person. And we live in a world, as you well know, that so many of these decision makers are running every decision they make through their internal modeling. Their internal modeling doesn't have a number for what Kyle Schwarber is worth qualitatively inside that clubhouse. But the Phillies were willing to overpay for their own player because he is the heartbeat of that club.
We'll end this segment here with you, Hembo, on the draft. The White Sox winning the MLB draft lottery, getting the #1 pick, given the fact that they had the second worst record in baseball. The Rockies, by the way, because of tanking rules, because they got 2 high picks over the last couple of years, they got the 10th pick in the draft. What do you think about this draft lineup here and the White Sox getting #1 here?
I'd love to nerd out, regarding this topic with you at some point, because I'm fascinated by the way in which Major League Baseball has overhauled this process. I think personally, at least, for the better. But the most important thing that needs to be said aloud is you need to remember the name Rock Chalowski. If you're not a ball knower, if you're not a college baseball watcher, he's the shortstop for the UCLA Bruins, and he is a surefire superstar. He is the kind of kid that you ask 100 scouts, and all 100 of them are going to return your text and say, I'm drafting that kid with the #1 overall pick. The kind of clout that Steven Strasburg had once upon a time. That's surefire a #1 overall pick. And considering the fact that the White Sox and their fans really needed some good news after a bunch of lean years, that's about as good a news as you could have gotten at the winter meetings. It's one thing to sign we'll call it mid-free agent, which they would have loved to have done, of course, but to obtain the #1 pick in the draft for a potential superstar shortstop, and I'm not willing to say that it's too early. In fact, I'd go as far as to say that it's a near lock that kid's going to be the #1 pick in the draft next summer, and he's going to be a foundational piece for the White Sox moving forward. You best believe.
Yeah, and of course the White Sox, as you mentioned, definitely need a big star, so that would be great for them. Our friend Paul Hembekides, of course, producer for ESPN's Get Up and contributor to the Baseball Tonight podcast. Hembo, always good stuff. Thank you so much, man, for joining us. All right, and don't go anywhere, guys. We have a lot more stuff coming up, including more on the Big 12 and the ACC going after Notre Dame. That's next.
Massive budget down there in LSU, no doubt about it, Joe. But
I just want to bring in, he's very close to Eddie O, too.
Yeah.
And Eddie O potentially had said he would, love a return. You bring that type of talent, another major recruiter.
Yes.
And Ed Ogeron back to Baton Rouge. You're going to have a fantastic NFL caliber type of staff, and they're going to hit the ground running week #1 come 2026.
SportsGrid's College Football Today.
There are a million ways to make money on this. There really is, right? Like, I sit back. We've given you a couple of ours that we've given you. I think they're all going to win, essentially. The gold one, the Google Views one. The only one I might not win, Cam, that I gave people was, will the U.S. government announce that aliens exist in 2026?
In-game live, only on SportsGrid.
Here's the problem. When Joe Dumars blows it up and trades Zion, who is going to give them anything more than 25 cents on the dollar for a damaged goods superstar who misses significant time, who doesn't love the game, but is built like a freight train? Problems are in New Orleans, and I don't know how it gets fixed.
Pro Basketball Today, only on SportsGrid.
Florida was thought to get Lane Kiffin, but they go and turn to Tulane head coach John Summerall. This is a solid hire, coach.
He's a tough-minded coach. I thought he would be a perfect fit at Auburn, just knowing he's from Alabama. But I think Florida got an outstanding coach. He will be a tough nut that knows how to win football games.
The Bowden Blitz, only on SportsGrid.
Welcome back to Running Front Office Sports Today. I'm Baker Machado, and the college football playoff drama involving Notre Dame has now reached a new level. That is, Fighting Irish athletic director Pete Bavacqua claimed that the ACC engaged in a targeted social media campaign for Miami that led to the Fighting Irish being snubbed from the playoff that now has forever, in his words, changed the relationship between the school and the league. Well, those comments didn't sit well with the other conference commissioners, as Big 12 leader Brett Yormark called Notre Dame's claims, quote, egregious and totally out of bounds. So let's bring in FOS editor-in-chief Dan Roberts. So Dan, is Notre Dame really sort of hurting their case right now for being included in the playoff because of how Pete Bavacqua has acted here?
Well, I think there was some truth to some of the complaints at some point, and now they've gone too far. Bavacqua's been on this media tour. I agree it's been egregious. specifically not just the ACC, but they've got beef with everyone. The ACC part of this is pretty silly because, of course, the ACC campaigned for Miami because Miami is a member school for football, and Notre Dame is not in the ACC for football. So I don't know what you would expect. Now, they have specific complaints like ACC Network kept re-airing the game in which Miami beat Notre Dame.
Right.
So look, the simplest answer to all this is they got unlucky. Next year, don't lose to the school that you end up being compared to at the end. Now, who could have seen, right? But there's just no argument to be made. You know, they ended up head-to-head compared to Miami, and they lost to Miami. What else is the committee going to use as that comp? Of course, now it has opened up a number of fascinating questions, like should Notre Dame be in a conference? I'm not sure if that would have helped or not. Are they going to join the ACC? If Notre Dame ever were to join a conference before all this brouhaha, you would have thought it would be the ACC. And there was a season during COVID where Notre Dame football was in the ACC for one season because it helped with the scheduling. You know, I think someone said at some point that I think Yormark actually said that the ACC saved Notre Dame that one season.
During the COVID season.
Notre Dame fans are taking issue with that. But you don't think it's going to be the ACC now. Some people say, could they go to the SEC? Could they go to the Big Ten? The likeliest thing is they stay independent. Because let's remember something, Notre Dame, the only school that has such an incredibly powerful, strong fan base, they're independent and they have their own media deal, right, with NBC. That's huge. But look, in recent years, as our media guy Mike McCarthy is writing, it hasn't been as much of a TV draw. So we'll see what happens next year. Let's also remember, to be fair, that the people who talk about the schedule, they didn't even play anyone. Well, look, that's what people said about Notre Dame last year and how quickly we forget. Notre Dame was in the championship game last year. I mean, people said that they didn't have an impressive record, and then they got in, and they beat Alabama and Georgia and Penn State, no problem. So Notre Dame, my point is there's a little nugget of truth here, which is, of course, they're upset they didn't get in, and they probably could have performed very well. They're a better team than the two Group of Five schools that got in.
Sure.
But that was the setup this year.
You know, Notre Dame defenders would argue it's not so much Notre Dame taking their ball and going home by not playing in the Pop-Tarts Bowl. It's they're showing sort of the hypocrisy and the inaccuracies within the college football bowl system in terms of how teams are selected for the playoff format. Pete Bavacqua says, look, we'll be in if we're in the top 12 next year based on sort of the language that's written here. But what do you sort of make of that argument that they're sort of showing flaws in the system?
I think that gives them a little too much credit. I mean, the simplest analysis is like, it sucks that they're skipping a big bowl game. By the way, not just any bowl game, it was the Pop-Tarts Bowl.
Which had a big rating.
The second most watched non-playoff bowl game.
Yep.
So that disappoints me
and they
as
would
a
have
fan.
had a big matchup against BYU, who also didn't make it.
And by the way, you don't want the desire to prove yourselves. I mean, why not play, smash BYU, and then say, see, we should have been in. It helps your case. A little bit of bragging rights. Very petty to sit out. Now, of course, players sitting out bowl games is not a new thing. That's always happened, and that's always been disappointing too. But I get it. If you're about to go to the NFL, you know, imagine injuring yourself in the bowl game that doesn't even matter. It's just an exhibition game. But now a whole school's sitting out. That's disappointing. Now, they're not the only ones. You know, K-State, Iowa State, one of Baylor that was offered a spot.
This is for different reasons.
Exactly right. This one is very petty.
It's interesting also you bring up Notre Dame's sort of difference with their media rights because, you know, obviously they're in NBC and Peacock. Pete Bavacqua, the athletic director, used to work at NBC. How much of this also is, you know, Pete Bavacqua sort of poking the eye at ESPN, given the fact that ESPN has the college football rights. He's criticizing the weekly show, which airs on ESPN. How much of that plays a role?
And don't forget the SEC bias, right?
Yes.
I mean,
which ESPN has basically all the rights to the SEC also.
Well, and in the mix here, even though this isn't the crux of the Notre Dame complaints, we can talk about the other controversies with this year's bracket, and one is Bama still makes it in there, right? I mean, lost big, looked bad in the conference championship game. Now, the argument is the precedent has been set that the conference championship game shouldn't hurt you. Well, if it can't hurt you, why do it? Why play in it? You know, it should count both ways. It should help you if you look great, and it should hurt you if you make it there and you get trounced. I mean, Bama ends up with 3 losses, and they stay in. So people say, but BYU gets bounced. So people are saying, you know, that they're having it both ways and that there's SEC bias. By the way, it seems to me that absolutely there's SEC bias, but also the SEC is the best conference in football right now. I mean, they had 5 schools in. They could have had 6, could have had 7. I mean, both Vandy and Texas are better than these 2 Group of 5 schools that got in. But again, that was the format, was that the top 5 highest-ranked conference champions are going to get in. So really, it's the ACC that screwed everyone this year. But to get back to your point about, you know, ESPN and that specific element, again, it's like anything else. There's a little germ of truth here in Notre Dame's complaints, right? ESPN is in bed with the CFP. So it behooves ESPN to do those rankings shows. They rate well, right? But this might be the turning point because you had even ESPN talent, Herb Street, Saban, saying, well, we probably do too many of these ranking shows and we probably start doing it too early.
It's understandable Pete Bavacqua defending Notre Dame and all of this, but what is your take on his sort of strategy that he's done where he's gone and done interviews with Barstool and a bunch of other places? Then he has this press conference that he has where he lambasts the ACC and everybody else. What do you sort of think of this strategy here?
Well, on one hand, it's working, right? It's working in the sense that we're talking about it.
Right.
Everyone's talking about it. Phillips issued a statement. Now, I think wisely, the statement was pretty good. The statement said, we never at any point disparaged Notre Dame's season or said they shouldn't be in.
You're talking about the ACC commissioner,
yes,
correct?
Jim Phillips. What we did do is we promoted Miami and campaigned for them, yes, because they're in the ACC for football, the end. And he hasn't really said anything beyond that. Smart. But even getting that statement, like, okay, you know, he's gotten attention. And then for your Mark to talk about it and say what he did. Now, he criticized Bavacqua, but the point is, all these officials, all these important people are commenting on it. So on one hand, the media tour has worked. But to what end? What's the goal here? What is the outcome they want? You're not going to get them to say, you're right, you should have been in the playoff. So what do they want to have happen? Either they're laying the groundwork to join a conference, or they're laying the groundwork to say scorched earth, something else, I don't know, some kind of threat.
Let's get to that. Let's get to that. Does this force their hand to join a conference, even though the likelihood of a giant super conference in a few years seems likely, or does this only embolden them to stay independent?
I don't think they should join a conference now. Other than this year, in past years, it seems to me that it has helped them to be independent.
Editor-in-Chief Dan Roberts, thank you so much. And coming up next, number one in the FOS water cooler, the Colts just signed a grandpa to be their quarterback. We'll tell you about it next.
Let's play our game of buy or sell. The Lions will make the playoffs this season. Buy or sell?
I believe that's what the computer tells us, right? They are almost exactly 50-50 to make the playoffs now after that win. Now, it's sort of the game I'm going to play here when we talk about the Cowboys making the playoffs. If you're going to put Detroit in, Craig, who are you taking out? All right? I mean, they're down, even with the win last night, they're not in the playoff spot right now. They're still the 8th seed here. You taking out San Fran? I mean, their schedule's cake. They should get in. Green Bay beat you twice. I mean, so you would probably need, for them to make the playoffs, Seattle's the other team, by the way, I think Seattle gets in. You would need Green Bay or Chicago, really, what they're ready for is one to beat the other. They do play each other twice, to beat them twice, right? They can't have a split here. They need either Chicago to beat Green Bay twice or Green Bay to beat Chicago twice, sort of eliminate the other team. So I am probably selling this. I do think there's a chance here. You look at the Lions' schedule, Pittsburgh, Minnesota, Chicago, the last two are on the road.
Yeah, I think that I'm on board here with you. In the AFC, Detroit would be in. But in the NFC, you have to make a prediction to knock a team out. Now, like as an example, in the NFC East, could you see a scenario, George, where Philadelphia just completely falls apart like they did 2 years ago? Sure, but then they still would win the division. Like you really can't find a path for the Lions unless, for me, I guess the team that I would question the most to make it and knock them out would be the Bears. Like that would be it. It would be just the Bears playing the softer schedule. I know they beat Philadelphia last week, but I just can't do it right now. So unfortunately, this could be a 11-win season, 10-win season for Detroit without them getting in. I will sell. They will not make it. I'm with you here.
Fantasy Sports Today, Friday starting at 3 p.m. Only on SportsGrid.
Welcome back, everyone, to Flying Off Sports Today. This podcast is brought to you by Invesco QQQ. In football, changing the game begins with rethinking it, like rethinking how players work on their game. And with wearable technology, advanced analytics, AI, and more, that same innovative thinking that changes the game could also change your portfolio. And Invesco QQQ gives you access to the innovators who are rethinking the world, so let's rethink possibility. Well, let's get you caught up on some of the other headlines we're following over at the FOS water cooler. And And joining me now from the control room, he's back, everyone.
I'm back.
Yes, he is. Our senior producer, John Shames, is going to join me in chatting some of these stories. John, good to see you, man.
Good to see you too, Baker. I'm still kind of buzzing. I don't know if it's just all of the Cheez-Its in my body right now or the great friendship that I created with the Cheez-It mascot, Prince Chedward, who was here earlier today. Good sneak preview of what's to come on FOST in the next couple of weeks, I would say.
Yeah, be sure to watch all of our social channels for that. We did try to get him to talk smack about the Pop-Tarts Bowl, but nothing.
He
really
runs a
came
tight
to it.
ship.
He does. He doesn't speak very much either. James, let's talk about a couple other headlines that we're watching right now, and let's start in the NFL. Because there have been down multiple quarterbacks because of star Daniel Jones' injury. The Colts signed 44-year-old grandfather Philip Rivers to their practice squad a day after the 16-year NFL veteran worked out for the team. Now, Rivers last played in the NFL in 2020. That's when he led the Colts, interestingly, to their most recent playoff appearance. He's been coaching high school football in his home state of Alabama since he retired in 2021. So what do you think about Philip Rivers here playing for the Colts? I mean, what a weird story for them.
Weird story. Weird, too, because he's actually eligible for a Hall of Fame bid right now, and it will be his clock will be reset to 2031 if he makes the active roster. 2020 was a long time ago, Baker. They had a great year, 11-5, made the playoffs, as you mentioned, but I mean, especially as you get older, 5 years seems like a really long time. So I like it. Clearly, he's a good guy to have around the organization. I would be shocked if we see Philip Rivers take any actual snaps.
It also sort of, I think, brings up this point of quality quarterbacks in the NFL, that there's just so few good ones that you literally have to go to somebody who hasn't played in the league in 4 years and ask them to come back to help you out here.
Totally. And I think when you think about the beginning of the year for the Colts, why they were playing so well was the lack of mistakes from Daniel Jones. So I get the idea of kind of trying to return to that mold and getting a guy who's just savvy and knows the offense well. But again, I would be pretty surprised if he ends up making that active roster, Baker.
All right, meanwhile, in the NBA, Chris Paul has finally spoken just a week after being dumped by the Clippers and forced to fly home to LA without his team. The 21-year NBA vet told People magazine, of all outlets, quote, "I'm actually at peace with everything. More than anything, I'm excited about being around and getting a chance to play a small role in whatever looks like next." Now, still no word on what the Clippers will do with Paul, if they'll release or trade him, who has said this year will be his last playing in the NBA. I think the deadline, or at least when they be able to do something with his contract, isn't until December the 15th. But just interesting that now Chris Paul is now finally talking about this.
Yeah, I mean, this kind of seems to be how he wants to go out. If this is his retirement, I mean, he said earlier in this year that this was going to be his last season anyway. And it seems like he's trying to control his narrative a little bit. Very weird situation to me when it happened. I was really taken aback by the idea that the Clippers would just have this very ugly divorce with the greatest player who's ever played for that franchise.
Well, meanwhile, it's good to be Asia Wilson, Shames. Just after the Aces star won her third NBA title in 4 years, the four-time WNBA MVP was just named Time's Athlete of the Year. She told the publication, quote, "When you've collected everything, that's Thanos. And this year, I collected everything." I feel like that is such a perfect sort of encapsulation of her really incredible year that she's had.
Absolutely incredible. And even perhaps more incredible, Baker, back-to-back years of Time Magazine naming a WNBA player as their Athlete of the Year. Last year it was Caitlin Clark. And we went through that list earlier. You had guys like Messi, the U.S. women's national team, Serena Williams and Simone Biles are on that list. So very prestigious company, and I think a sign that the WNBA has really arrived in the cultural zeitgeist.
Absolutely. All right, let's tell everyone what we're watching tonight, Shames.
Yeah, so let's stick with the women's hoops themes for a moment. We've got the Cy-Hawk matchup in women's basketball. Number 11 Iowa at number 10 Iowa State. That's 7 p.m. on ESPN, Baker. Two undefeated teams matching up here in this interstate rivalry. And we've got Suns at Thunder at 7:30 p.m. on Prime Video. And Spurs at Lakers in the late window. That's at 10 p.m., Baker. A good night of games.
Yeah, by the way, those NBA Cup semifinals, we saw the Magic and the Knicks both punch their tickets to the next round of the NBA Cup. Are you still into it?
I'm into it. I thought it was interesting that the Magic didn't end up having their NBA Cup court, which I feel like is the whole allure of it. But yeah, I'm a big fan of the NBA Cup. I think there's this idea of like, who is it for? Like, it's for the pockets of the league, let's be real. But I'm still into it, and it feels different to me than a regular season game.
And look, the players should be into it also. They get $500,000 for each player for the winning team. Shames, thanks so much. We'll see you later, and thank you at home for watching. We'll see you next time for more Front Office Sports Today.